I was reading in your book, Help for Billy, some questions that parents and teachers can use in those moments when kids are kind of losing it, melting down, however you want to phrase it. Can you talk about those questions that you recommend?
Now, let's talk first about the question, what not to ask, because I think that's the place to start, right? So I think when we work with kids, and whether we're the teacher, parent, whatever our role is, we automatically within our mind go, okay, how do I get this child to change their behavior? How do I get them to be able to sit still in the classroom, to work on their assignment, to not touch the kid next to them, not to call out, to raise their hand at home? How do I get this child to empty the dishwasher? How do I get this child, all these things. And so that's the wrong question. So what I first want to do is scratch that out, throw that question out, and then give you two new questions. And the first one is, what is driving this child's behavior? What is it that is moving this child to be disobedient? Why can't this child sit in the classroom like their neighbor next to him? Why can't this kid remember to turn in their homework? And then we may not always have that answer. And so I've always said, okay, well, let's jump to the second question. This one is a foolproof question. And this one is, what can I do at this very moment to improve my relationship with this child, with this student? That is one of the simplest concepts on the planet Earth, but I will say it will be one of the hardest ones to actually implement in practice, because you're talking about kids who, at that moment, they're obnoxious, they're rude, there's profanity coming out of their mouth, they're the kind of kid you don't even want to be next to, honestly. And I say that in a loving way, because this is what they do. They push relationship away. And I'm giving the advice then to come into relationships. So what that means for the adult then is that you have to let everything go. This isn't about changing how you look or how they look or anything else. All it is that that very moment, how do I get into the heart of this child? How do I be able to reach into the deeper parts of the caverns of their heart that are hurting, that are overwhelmed, and let everything else go for the moment? And so those are the two questions that the premise of my work is really based off of how do we answer those two questions. And obviously I have 6 books to answer that, because it's a hard thing to do, but that is the premise of the understanding.
So as a parent then, when I hear that, I wonder, okay, that's all fine and good, but I really do just want them to empty the dishwasher. and if I do that, I get like we talk about it a lot in our class, and the work we do with parents is, relationship is first and foremost. Like that's what we're looking for. We're playing the long game of relationship. And yet, as a parent or as an educator, there's sometimes we just want them to do this stuff. And I'm afraid that if I'm just doing relationship stuff, they're never going to be able to do that. They're never either going to learn it, or they're never going to really do that in the long term, like empty the dishwasher at any point, not just right now, but even like in the weeks to come. So what do you say to a parent or an educator about that?
I think that's a valid fear. And actually, it is the truth. If we only focus on relationship and never get to the life lesson, I think that's just not good parenting. And so it's the timing of it. So my basic answer is it's the timing. So when I talked about the brain, when the child is in that lower part of the brain, the midbrain, that is not the time to teach the lesson. Because what we also know through science is that stress causes short-term memory loss. And so if you are trying to teach a lesson of, you've got to be able to empty the dishwasher, you've got to turn in your homework, that child isn't in the space of their brain that they can even remember it. And I think that's where we get so frustrated, because we're like, I've told you 1,000 times not to do this. Well, the problem is we've told them 1,000 times when they're in the wrong part of the brain. So the timing then comes where once we're able to settle that child down through the context of relationship, give them attention, be able to help them to feel loved and wanted and special. At least we offer it. They can't always receive it, but we offer it. And then once that child's calmed down, and you know what, when you know kids and you really begin to see it from their perspective, you know exactly when they have switched their brains into a logical place, into that prefrontal cortex. We don't need brain scans for this. There's so much that we can tell from their body language and their tone of voice, their posture. That then is the critical time. That is when we do have to get logical. That is when we do have to be able to set boundaries and teach that life lesson that says, look, you're a part of this family. You're a very important part of this family, but that means we need you to contribute. You know what? I do your laundry, I do the cooking. I also then need you to do X, Y, and Z. And so it's not always that easy, but that's sort of the formula. And I think that the more that we understand that that teaching moment absolutely indeed has to happen, but when we do it is going to be the critical piece when we don't, and we won't find ourselves so frustrated.